day, everyone. So, there are a lot of presidential hopefuls. There have been a lot of presidential candidates coming out stating that they are willing to run for president for whatever reason. And all of these candidates have their own reasons on why they are running for president. But I think that we should definitely break down some key candidates so we can truly understand, will they assist Black Americans in our fight of what is owed to us, reparations. Now, I would like to believe that none of these candidates have a chance in hell other than Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but the upcoming presidential election brings with it a myriad of candidates, each with their own visions for America's future, right? However, it is essential to critically evaluate these candidates and their policies and to understand how they will address the concerns and needs of Black Americans. Not brown Americans, not yellow Americans, not white Americans, but Black Americans. We continue to give our vote overwhelmingly to the Democratic Party and we yield no results. It does not benefit our group. Now, we need to examine some of these people, right? Whether it be Nikki Haley, Donald Trump, Viveka Ramaswamy, Asa Hutchinson, Larry Elder, Tim Scott, which we know those two are just buck dancing for zaddy. They're not going to do anything for Black people. Ron DeSantis, or more Ron DeSantis, however you want to pronounce his name, Mike Pence, Chris Christie, Doug Bergman, who is the governor of North Dakota that nobody really knows. But let's first start off with a small introductory monologue about Joe Biden, right? We know that his presidency has promised progress to Black Americans. Some argue that his political history raised concerns for Black Americans. Critics argue that his role in the 1994 crime bill that we spoke massively on this channel disproportionately affected Black people, mostly Black men, leading to an increase in mass incarceration. Furthermore, some claim that his previous statements and actions on immigration, when asked about reparations, what we will cover and talk about here later in the segment, about he totally benign, neglect, and disrespect Black folk. Yeah, he lacks consistency. Skepticism is all around his candidacy, as we're speaking about him just now. And of course, he is not going to address the systematic racism that the white dominant society, by the way of white supremacy, plagues Black America. And then we have Marianne Williamson. Now, we know her for being the spiritual advisor for Oprah. We know her spiritual perspective and focus on love and healing. Her lack of political experience raises questions about her ability to effectively tackle the deep-rooted racial disparities and injustices for Black Americans, even though she does what any other person would do when addressing Black America. They speak to our trials. They speak to our tribulations. They speak to all of these things that affect us each and every day. But you know the one thing, family? You know the one thing? She's speaking about reparations, but she's not speaking about the correct numbers of reparations. It's kind of like if someone owed you $100 and say, hey, you know, I'm gonna make sure I give you that $1 that I owe you. You're like, no, you owe me 100. Well, the most that I can muster up from all the other groups who put their hand in the cookie jar is $1. No, pay me what you owe. You have the money. We know the receipts. We see the budget of the money going out to all these different groups. And I don't need the name, the number one contenders, Ukraine. The foreign budget has all sorts of African countries, Caribbean countries that they're paying to have footholds in those countries. But nonetheless, we know the receipts. So we know that this government has the money. We see it each and every time. And we're going to break down where the money is, where the money comes from, and where the money is going. Now we have, I think this is John F. Kennedy, John H. Kennedy, one of the Kennedys, right? Now, we understand that no need to even address him. He doesn't have a chance in hell. But we move on to Donald Trump. We know that his presidency was marked by all sorts of sexual controversy and polarizing rhetoric. Critics argue that his approach exacerbated racial tensions and failed to prioritize the concerns of black communities. Now, we understand his responses to incidents of police brutality and reluctance to address systematic racism not only have raised questions, but let us know that he allegedly is a white supremacist himself, by not promoting racial equality. But he'll talk to you, as he told the black community, what else do you have to lose? Well, nothing, because nothing has ever been given to us. Nikki Haley, political background does not indicate a strong focus on racial justice or policies to uplift black Americans. Why would we go out and vote for people if they do not have a voice, if they did not have a voice or policies or any sort of rhetoric that support the black communities? Again, we must be one. Black first. And it is not in controversy or contradiction to any other group, but we are tired of the kumbaya. We are tired of bringing everybody in and receive no rewards. I'm just tired. We're bringing everybody in. It's a black and brown coalition that does not exist. We understand that a portion of Hispanic culture deals in white ideology and neo-Nazism, and they go out on killing sprees, either by the way of the racial soldiers that wear badges, or Nazi groups that even stem down in Mexico City of the anti-black hate that they have for our people, even though these are brown and white Hispanics. So we can only imagine. We can only imagine. Now, I may butcher this guy's name, but Viveki Ramwasi, you know, he's an entrepreneur and businessman. I believe his wife is a billionaire. I don't know. But he lacks a political track record, making it challenging to assess his potential impact on the concerns of black Americans. And we will reference the interview between Don Lemon and himself, so you can hear him for himself, okay? And let's just point out, a guy like him, he's a first generation Indian American where his family, his mother and father are from India. So his views are obscured by his upbringing and dealing in white conservatism and the white American, rhetoric that he definitely deals in as big as a conservative Indian American / Asian American / Republican. About his ability, think about it. And then we move on to, let's move on to Asa Hutchinson. Now, we understand that he has a long-standing career in politics, which there's a lot of old white politicians that has not moved the needle on anything that will assist, support, or propel black people in the right direction. That is decreasing the wealth gap. But dealing with his policies, it's been widely recognized for his specific impact on the lives of black Americans. But without a strong record of championing racial injustice incentives, his candidacy may not resonate with those seeking a transform leader in his domain. So, no. Do we have to talk about Larry Elder? Do we really? We understand he is a conservative radio host. He has garnered attention as a black Republican. He's probably more so a white Republican in blackface. His positions on issues such as affirmative action and voter rights have not only done criticism but disdain for black Americans. And we pretty much in our community have turned up our nose to him. Some people, who go against him, critics, whoever, argue that his policies could roll back progress made in areas such as criminal justice reform, voting rights, and most importantly, economic equality. Now, Tim Scott, another black Republican senator, he's focused on areas such as criminal justice reform, and people have been handing him his ass all over TV. Because some black voters expressed concerns about his alignment with a party that criticized its stance on issues that disproportionately affect black Americans, such as voting rights and police reform. And Ron DeSantis. We understand he has faced all sorts of scrutiny for his handling of racial issues dealing with black American history. okay? Whether it be Black American history, his responses and stands on Black Lives Matter movement, his attack against so-called woke culture. I mean, you name it, he's been very, very critical of all these things. And then later on, family, we will cover Dr. Cornel West. Definitely will cover Dr. Cornel West. It's very, very important that we cover him. But first here, family, what I want to do, once I get queued up here, is go over some things about Mike Pence. Mike Pence and rival to Donald Trump. Some you may think that Mike Pence is the #1 rival because he was the VP to Donald Trump. I don't really think so. I think that Mike Pence doesn't have a chance in hell because Donald Trump has a cult-like following and they look at Mike Pence as a traitor, okay? But Mike Pence, either he's staying loyal to Donald Trump but want to go his own way, or he's staying loyal to the Republican Party. I don't know. I'm just asking questions because I don't have all the answers. But I do know the new 2024 Republican candidate, Mike Pence, takes on Trump. And some of the things here, it states that Pence also tried to set himself apart from both Trump and other hopefuls by emphasizing his conservative positions on abortion, transgender care, Social Security, TikTok, and other issues. TikTok, bite dance, whatever you want to call it. Could it be a covert spy account that's collecting all large sorts of data of Americans and the way we vote, the way our political and economic system move? Probably. Who knows? Pence hopes no indictment. Pence hopes no indictment of Trump. Mums on part, he says, it will send a terrible message to the wider world from the symbol of justice to other countries. What symbol will it send to Michael Pence? Big Mike, what message will it send? That America stands up for justice no matter what position or authoritative level that you reside on? Is that what you're stating? Is you stating that America is for liberty and justice? That it doesn't matter if you are the president or someone who is unsheltered, you will be persecuted when breaking the law and proven in a court of law. Handle out your sentence. But this is the way we handle our politics here in America. But nonetheless, I really want to move on to Raviki Ramwapsi, and this is Fair Use, Fair Use. I want to point out this interview that he had with Don Lemon that everybody is stating is the source, is the reason of him getting fired from CNN. So I'm going to let this play for the most part, family, and I want you to hear the back and forth and the dialogue. And when Don Lemon has had enough of him speaking against black folk and not understanding our history and where we come from. And here's again, you know, a lot of times, family, there are a lot of Indian Americans in America. You know, they came over here on visas, got their citizenship. Most of them work in the tech world. And matter of fact, this fella here, he's a tech billionaire, or excuse me, almost a tech billionaire. I think he's worth like $600 million. See, America has paved the way for first generation immigrants like himself and others, except for the foundation of America, people who are the culture of America. The people and ancestry, by the way of lineage, has built America, have put up roadblocks and barriers for you to fail and not be successful. I digress. Let's move on and let's listen to what's going on right here.
In the South. But you're equating that to the current president? You're referring to economic change? What are you saying?
Well, I was referring to Joe Biden's, I think, ill-chosen expression to say they're the party that wants to put you back into chains. What I'm actually saying is that if you look at the policies of the modern Democratic Party...
Democrats.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that actually it's policies like that of Lyndon Johnson and Joe Biden that are actually holding black Americans back.
Lyndon Johnson's the war on poverty?
Yes, and in particular, his Great Society, where he actually created incentives in the family where if you're a family, you could actually get more money by not having the father in the home. Guess what you get? You get what you pay for. And I think it's been really bad for the black community. I think it's really bad for all Americans.
Do you have anything on this before I move on to China?
I don't see what one has to do with the other, but go on. I took up a lot of time with Fox.
Oh, it's fine. We have.
You see how Don Lemon, he didn't want to get himself in trouble. Don Lemon didn't want to get himself in trouble, family. He tried to be the so-called bigger person in this. He really didn't have any comments. He's like, if I say something here, he's plucked my nerve, but I'm going to keep my job. But it didn't work out for Don Lemon. He just had to say something. When disrespect kind of goes too far.
I don't really see what one has to do with the other, especially and using the Civil War to talk about black Americans. That war was not fought for black people to have guns. That's not.
That war was fought for black people to have freedoms in this country.
Yeah.
Actually, that's why the Civil War was fought.
Okay.
And the sad part about it.
That wasn't fought for black people to have guns, I think.
Actually, you know, funny fact is, black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Black people still aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
When you are in black skin and you live in this country, then you can disagree with me. But we're not. You mentioned in here that we have three different shades of melanin.
Don, I think we have to be able to talk about these issues in the open, regardless of the color of our skin. Black Americans today, to say that, compare that to 1865 and 1964,
I think for you to compare it to 1865 and 1964 is actually, I think it's insulting to black people. It's insulting to me as an African American. I don't want to sit there and argue with you because it's infuriating for you to put those things together. It's not right. Your telling of history is wrong.
What part of the history was wrong? What part of the history was wrong?
That the Civil War was fought. You're making people think that the Civil War was fought for black people, only for black people to get guns and for black people to have.
The Civil War was fought for black people in this country to get freedoms, a noble mission. And I think that
what's reluctant is that Don Lemon still was holding back why, black Americans fought the Civil War. That is because the South was getting powerful and they wanted to hold on to slavery as the economic powerhouse. And Don Lemon understands that. He was being very reluctant not to say certain things here on national TV. And this Vivek Swamy guy is stating initially that the reason why black Americans were fighting was so they can have the right to carry guns. No, it was much more than that. And the only reason why blacks fought in the Civil War is for freedom, for themselves. But that's not the reason that President Lincoln allowed or ordered or encouraged them to fight. See, he told them on one hand that if you fight and we win, I'll set you free. It was a bargain. It was a deal. It was a contract. But just think about if we have lost, then what would have happened? Then the South would have won, then we'd just be a whole Republicans. But if we look at it a different way too, family, did you know that a lot of things have been coming out about President Lincoln and how he was going to deport these so-called enslaved black Americans back to Africa? I digress. You can look it up for yourself. I'm going to let this interview finish.
Yes,
after we succeeded, we had to actually secure those freedoms.
To reduce it in a speech at the NRA to say you're making people think, or you're trying to say that black people to get guns, that was the reason that you're there at the NRA. That was the reason for the Civil War.
It is a
fact.
That's
reductive.
It's not
and
reductive,
I think it's
Don.
Insulting. There are a whole plethora of reasons that for the Civil War.
With due respect, I find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people.
If that's not reverse psychology for your ass.
Today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured. And the Second Amendment was part of what secured
hang on,
that
please.
freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear. So hang on one second. So to say that black people, say what you said again.
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
Do you guys see how he's like being very degrading to Don Lemon, very like nonchalant, not really paying attention to what he's even stating? And then he's very insulting. First, Don Lemon say, I find what you're stating is very insulting. Then he states the same thing while insulting Don Lemon, talking about if you study, meaning that you don't know. Anytime someone says, maybe you should go and study a certain thing, they're insulting you thinking that you don't know, or they know or perceive that you don't know.
Or not secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That it's not, you are discounting Reconstruction, you're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to happen.
And you know how they got it?
They
got their Second Amendment rights, and they actually got, the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the
NRA did not.
This guy stated that the NRA, the National Rifle Association, played a big role in black Americans obtaining freedoms in America. NRA is a heavily funded Republican right-wing.
Not play a big
absolutely,
role in
they
that.
trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not. The NRA did not play a big role in
This is just historical fact.
It's not historical fact.
The part that I find
historical fact.
The part that I find insulting is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have gone through civil rights revolution in this country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I have
the
a different point of view.
Black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate without me regarding you as a black man, but me regarding you as a fellow citizen. That's what I think we should see.
Whatever ethnicity you are explaining to me.
Whatever ethnicity I'm, I'll tell you.
Another black moment. That's when Don Lemon showed his black voice. That's when Don Lemon showed his black face. Don Lemon, I knew you had it in you, brother. Good job. It cost you your job, but nonetheless, good job. Now, out of all the coonery and buck dancing that he's done the whole time at CNN, this was pleasant to hear and to watch, because he said, whatever ethnicity you are, because he didn't probably want to get it wrong. Like, you can be a Pacific Islander, you can be a black Mexican. I don't even know who you are. Even though I know your name and you're on the show and I probably did my research, but this is the way how Don Lemon showed his anger and being uncannily disrespectful to him, which I do agree, because you come on my news show and you disrespect me and black Americans alike.
Like to be black.
Whatever
America.
ethnicity I am, I'll tell you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white, doesn't matter.
I think we should have this
on
debate
the content of the ideas.
If you're going to do it, you should do it in an honest way and in a fair way. And what you're doing is not an honest and fair way. Okay? But we appreciate you coming on.
With due respect, Don, I look.
So my question here, family, is that somebody you want to be your president? I'm speaking to black America. Is that somebody you want to be your president? Because let me just kind of give you some background information on this fella here. It states here now, Vivek, I'm just gonna call him Vivek. He was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. He's 37 years of age. He's a son of Indian immigrants. His father, a General Electric engineer. His mother, a geriatric psychiatrist. His parents migrated to the United States over 40 years ago. So again, like I said, he's a first generation America. So he's here telling black Americans how we got freed, how, the freedoms we have in America. And Don Lemon definitely opposed those things, because he said, I live in this skin every day. How can you tell me? But nonetheless, guess who Vivek reminds me of? This fella right here. Yep. Now, I don't want to mispronounce or butcher, the Prime Minister of the UK, but nonetheless, this is also a first or second generation. I believe he's second generation British citizen that became the prime minister here. Now, let me give you a little bit of history about this guy. So it says here that the couple, they're talking about his parents, were originally from Kenya and Tanzania before immigrating to the UK in the 1960s, both having roots in India. Now, we understand that he's made these very strict anti-illegal immigration laws that mostly affect the Africans who tried to come over there mostly by boat. But his family, his parents are from Kenya and Tanzania. Now, what's funny here is 5 reasons that explain the stand on immigrants, right? The recent immigration policy proposed by UK Prime Minister has caused quite a stir. The Stop the Boat Bill, or illegal migration bill, seeks to end illegal entry as a route to asylum in the country, even denies them opportunity to put forth their cases. Many have been taken back by Sunuk's strong anti-immigration stance and his utterance, especially considering his own family's migration history. Now, even though I agree with the bill, I want you to understand the dichotomy, duplicity, and dynamics of what they're stating here. They're saying you doing all these anti-illegal immigration, and then the article is stating considering his own family's migration history. What is that telling you, family? There's some underlying secret, non-public ways that his family possibly, allegedly came over here illegally, okay? Let me move on. It states here, and his ancestors migrated from undivided India and settled in Kenya. His parents migrated to Britain in the 1960s, making him a twice migrant. Sunuk is not alone in his category, Home Secretary, and talking about some other people there in Britain, but nonetheless, family, you have people like him who are now the prime minister of one of the most, colonizing countries in the world, if not the number one. But I just give that for some reference and contrast. Let's move on to your friend, your presidential hopeful, Marianne Williamson. Now, what's important about Marianne Williamson, before I go ham on her, is that she speaks to the Black community. She speaks about our problems. She speaks about our history. She speaks about our lineage. She says all the right things to group you in, to pull you in, right? It's kind of like the pastor at the pulpit. They pull you in, you kind of get soaking, and you get comforted and hugged with all the things that they're stating, right? But when you get down to the nitty-gritty of things, first, I want to show you her love for Black America. I think that's important to note.
Speaking of reparations, Ms. Williamson, AKA, many of your opponents support a commission to study the issue of reparations for slavery. But you are calling for up to $500 billion in financial assistance. What makes you qualified to determine how much is owed in reparations?
Well, first of all, it's not $500 billion in financial assistance. It's $500 billion, $200 to $500 billion, payment of a debt that is owed.
Now, I must point out that first it's $500 billion, and she said it's $200 to $500 billion. Family, I've done the math here on this channel. Because, again, let's just do it very quickly. If we just take $350,000, okay, times 50 million equals damn near $17.5 trillion. $17.5 trillion, family. Did the math. So she's way below, and some people are even talking about $70 trillion. But I was just throwing out a very arbitrary number that if the federal government gave each foundational Black American, U.S. freeman that derived from descendants of slaves, or that we are descendants of slaves, received $350,000. Just imagine how much money will be $500 billion to 50 million foundational Black Americans, descendants of American slaves. It would be pennies. And some people, oh, that's better than nothing. Pay what you owe. Because here's the thing. If you don't pay your mortgage, you don't pay your rent, you don't pay your light bill, and you only pay a fraction of it, they hit you up with late fees. Interest is compounded on the amount, and you end up owing more than you did before. So this is a rolling bill that interest is being applied by the national average each and every year. But I'll let her finish, because already when we hear people talking about some of the things that our people went through, some of the tragedies, some of the horrors that our people went through, that we're still going through to this day, we started to believe that they're on our side. But again, always, even when this channel was Financial Literacy 101, always follow the money.
That is what reparations is. We need some deep truth-telling when it comes. We don't need another commission to look at evidence. I appreciate what Congressman O'Rourke has said. It is time for us to simply realize that this country will not heal. All that a country is a collection of people. People heal when there's some deep truth-telling. We need to recognize that when it comes to the economic gap between blacks and whites in America, it does come from a great injustice that has never been dealt with. That great injustice has had to do with the fact that there was 250 years of slavery, followed by another 100 years of domestic terrorism. What makes me qualified to say $200 to $500 billion? I'll tell you what makes me qualified. If you did the math of the 40 acres and a mule, given that there was 4 to 5 million slaves at the end of the Civil War, there were 4 to 5, and they were all promised 40 acres and a mule for every family of 4. If you did the math today, it would be trillions of dollars, and I believe that anything less.
This is when, the math doesn't add up. Because she just stated, if you did the math today, which she's telling the truth, it would be trillions of dollars. It would be trillions of dollars. It is trillions of dollars. But what she's about to say now, and I'm going to back it up just a little bit here. What she's about to say now is that to make it more politically feasible, in order for us to receive the money, she's decreased it down to $500 billion. Now, if someone owed their student loans to the federal government, have they decreased your loan amount yet? Have they did loan forgiveness yet? There's just a couple of questions I have. Or be an independent or private entity that you have to pay monies back to. Maybe a credit card debt, maybe a car loan, so on and so forth. Have they trimmed off 100 billion, 200 trillion, so on and so forth? I think not.
Less than $100 billion is an insult, and I believe that $200 to $500 billion is politically feasible today because so many Americans.
What does politically feasible mean? It means that this American government knows that it owes us trillions of dollars to be dispersed in direct cash payments, assistance with land grants, and enacting legislation for a protected class. But are they going to do that? No. Have they grouped us in the anti-Asian hate crime bill? No. They have done none of sorts. Have they partitioned off land like they did the Native Americans for we can live amongst ourselves and build our own economies? No.
Americans realize there is an injustice that continues to form a toxicity underneath the surface, an emotional turbulence that only reparations.
Thank you very much. Senator Sanders.
Yeah. Again, family, I think we must continue to speak truth to power. And with people like her, I really, really need to bring receipts because it is very, very important. So our dear brother, Marcel Dixon, quote unquote, had a debate with Marianne Williamson that I think that hasn't got as much coverage. Now it's been seen by a lot of people, but I definitely want you guys to remember this when you're going to the voting booth, or if you don't go to the voting booth, is nothing is on the table. We need to show these people our power. Look at this. Now listen to this message.
Reparations comes from the federal government. It does not come from your tax dollars. America pays reparations every single day. They're paying it to Ukrainians right now. They're paying it when they take care of people in the country illegally and going to the trillions. They paid it to the Japanese Americans who were interned. Even though my great-grandfather helped to save the Jews from the Nazis, he came back to America and he was locked out of the GI Bill, which gave trillions of dollars to mainly white veterans that they say built the middle class. And yet those same Jews right now are getting reparations. People in Wall.
Wait, I have to stop you. I am a Jew. What Jews right now are getting?
Family, we need to understand that Marianne Williamson
Stop you. I am a Jew. What Jews right now are getting reparations?
The Jews who are Holocaust survivors.
Now is true. What?
The Jews who are Holocaust survivors.
But they're not getting reparations from the American government.
No, they're not what the American government did in 2014.
See, Marcel is breaking this thing down masterfully. I love what this brother had done here. Let me see if I can get this going. Some of the video has stopped here. Let me see here. Just having a couple of technical difficulties, as I always do. I got some of the best equipment, but here we go again. But the family, what I think is important here is that when he struck that nerve of his great-grandfather fighting for the freedom of Jewish people and how Jewish people have received reparations.
Reparations comes from the federal government. Me, a descendant of American slaves, haven't seen a penny yet. At the end of slavery, and I know you probably know these numbers, 42 to 84 trillion dollars was the value of those of us who were enslaved. And I like the fact that you're running on reparations, but you have $1 trillion as the amount.
Look at the white girl in the background. She almost agreed with everything.
And I understand that you may have to make it palatable to the American public, but if we want to do what's right, we got to do what's right. And the amount that we are owed is at $70 trillion minimum. If you just do $1 trillion, they said in the 20th century, Black Americans lost $400 billion in just land theft alone. That doesn't go to Jim Crow. That doesn't go to being left from the Homestead Act that gave white Americans $10 trillion and 300 acres. So I love the fact that we're running a reparations plan, but your plan is going to have to get those numbers right. It's got to be lineage based, and the money needs to go directly to us. Because when the Japanese Americans got their money, it didn't go to a council, it went straight to them. Those Holocaust survivors, that money goes straight to them.
That's right.
We deserve to have even more so.
Yeah, so let me say a couple of things. First of all, I honor how you stand up for your ancestors, and I stand up for mine. The United States has not paid $1 of reparations to Jews for the Holocaust.
Lies.
That's number one. And by the way, as far as some of the things you said about Roosevelt, which was true about his treatment of black people, he didn't do well by the Jews during the 2 years when Hitler said they could still leave. So I will not stand here while anti-Semitic tropes are repeated.
That's not anti-Semitic, that's the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's not anti-Semitic, that's the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth. Holocaust survivors are getting reparations. That is not anti-Semitic, that's the truth. And I will continue to do so, and standing up for my ancestors means speaking the truth. Holocaust survivors did get 14 trillion facilitated. That is a fact. That is a fact. I don't know what it meant. All I know that my ancestors have not gotten a penny. My ancestors have not gotten a penny. That's all I know. And it's an insult for the American government to facilitate a facilitation of payment to Holocaust survivors while my great-grandfather is still alive and he fought to save the Jews from the Nazis.
Well, I would definitely say that Marianne Williamson, my brother, my dear brother Marcel, if you see this video, doesn't owe you an apology. You know what system she's adhering to. But you were absolutely right. All the money that the Jews have received from the American government, and you stating those facts are not anti-Semitic. Anytime, what I'm realizing here, family, whether it be Kanye West in some aspects, I'm not agreeing with everything he said. Let me point that out very clearly. And also Kyrie Irving, that anytime black folks speak anything that's closely related to Jews or Jewish, then we're being anti-Semitic. And they created a word all on their own about that. I mean, but anytime we talk about the grievances that we have with all these different other groups that really kill us with impunity, I mean, I can't even dress it up no more than that, man. Like, there's no intellect that I can even conjure up in my mind to go forth and say, other than we're being killed with impunity. But anyway, back to the money, because that's what's important here. The Obama administration, now this is coming from WassermanSalts.gov, okay? Serving Florida's 25 congressional district. It states here that the Obama administration awarded $12 million for assistance to Holocaust survivors. Has the Obama administration gave millions of dollars to Black Americans? It has not. I digress. With this award, we will be able to advance our efforts to provide crucial services to vulnerable survivors, including those living in poverty, those in the Orthodox Jewish community, and those from former Soviet Union. Okay? It states here that these are our mothers and fathers, our teachers and our mentors. They deserve to live their remaining years in dignity, and this will help make their hope a reality. That will make their hope a reality. Family, anytime I kind of go over these things, it charges me up. I get really geared because we have people who have went through all sorts of tragedies in Nazi Germany, and these survivors have come to America to get away from that area, away from those tragedies, and we have been paying them reparations. And if you also state other countries other than Germany has paid them reparations. I'm not against it. But when it comes to reparations for Black Americans, it's hush over Jerusalem. No pun intended. But let's move on, because I think it's important that we point out some other things of monies that goes to the Jewish community by the way of the federal government. It says here that lawmakers seek $1.5 million increase in Holocaust survivor aid funding. Okay? More than 100 House lawmakers are calling for a boost in funding for the Holocaust Survivor Assistance Program, which provides support for aging Holocaust survivors and their family, as well as elderly victims of other traumatic events. Family, if there's an ongoing fund that is funded by the American government, is that not consistent year-on-year reparations? Correct me if I'm wrong. Can I read it one more time for you? Let's get into it. More than 100 House lawmakers are calling for a boost, meaning that they're already receiving money, and funding for the Holocaust Survivor Assistance Program. Holocaust Survivors Assistance Program, meaning giving money to survivors of the Holocaust and assist them in their everyday lives. Not against it. Which provides support for aging Holocaust survivors and their family, as well as elderly victims of other traumatic events. Marcel, as Cornel West was saying, we'll get on him, my dear brother, you are correct. You are absolutely correct. So before I get to Cornel West, we must cover good old Joe Biden. Joe Biden, have you failed lately? That's just a joke. I don't want anyone to get hurt, I guess, but at the same time, I don't care. But then I move on. So here's some of the things that he's come ever so lately on his promises to America. And again, a lot of these things do not address Black Americans. And you see right here, reduced health uninsured rate for African Americans. But again, family, I assure you, if you go in and read this, you will find out that it's for Americans, not just Black Americans. And they try to do these things to pander to Black America. And I'm just going to tell these folks here today that we can read, and that's probably unfortunate for you. Yeah, you let the slaves read. Now we can read. Now we can comprehend. Now we can do research, and we use your own evidence that you post on social media against you. That's the way it is, and that's the way we love it. You tell on yourselves. Yep, you tell on yourselves. But anyway, here are some of the things that he came ever so lately on his promises, right? And we're just going to do a quick overview of all the things that does not help Black Americans solely, right? nominate the first black woman to the Supreme Court. Who cares? Who does that help? That helps her in her pockets. Doesn't help broke black Americans in the hoods and the ghettos and low impoverished areas. It does not help us at all. It doesn't assist us in any way. That's called symbolism, because we say, oh, Joe Biden for the blacks, because he put a black woman in the Supreme Court. He got a little black people, going to do something. And Jim Clyburn, they all in the cahoots with each other, so they're going to do something for black Americans. They have done nothing for black Americans, and they will not do nothing for black Americans. And of course, family, I'm going to show you the video. I'm going to show you the video because I believe that it's important to not only have evidence, but referencing evidence from the horse mouth itself. But before we get there, I want to go over to some things here that Joe Biden has not come through, okay? He has not come through. We see compromises. We see promises broken. We see things that have been stalled. And if you just do a quick glance, you go to PolitiFact.com truth meter when it comes to Joe Biden, you can read through all this legislation like I have, and that none of this is solely for black Americans. But what you will find out through research that Joe Biden has signed into law, either through an executive order or the regular legislative process, things that assist other communities except for our own. Legislation that help assist other communities other than our own. And again, I must point out the figures. I must go back to the math. 87% of black Americans voted for Joe Biden. Why? Because we didn't get this. We didn't get Biden signs anti-black hate crime legislation. We didn't get that. And some of you like, oh man, that's just a piece of paper. If somebody does some hate crime bills against Asians, they're going to be persecuted to the full extent of the law. And you're correct, but there's money. There's money in Sue. $14 million in Stop the Hate funds. 166, let me blow it up for you guys on your cell phones. 166.5 million dedicated to combating bias-motivated attacks, including those targeting our AAPI community. Where do you think that money is going, family? Well, we know it's going to the Asian community, but what do you think it's going to be used for? Is it going to be for more CCTV cameras to catch people who are going to try to attack Asian Americans? And let me just point out this very, very quickly. Let me point out this disclaimer, and I'm going to go off on a win. I'm going to speak for a majority of black America. First and foremost, we can care less. We're not anti-Semitic. We're not ravishing our minds day in and day out about Jewish Americans and how we hate or love or dislike or like Jewish Americans. We can care less. We're just black, trying to live our life, trying to live in a racist society that's ran by white supremacists. And we're not focused on one demographic or another. But we have to pay attention to the white power structure that support and assist white supremacists that kills us. But no, black Americans are not anti-Semitic. We don't just go around talking about Jewish people. For most of us, we just think that Jewish people is a religion. And when they did the history, better yet, when they backed the science and they did the DNA, RNA of some of this unorthodox Jewish community, that the DNA stated that they were Anglo-Saxon. Is that anti-Semitic? Is that anti-Semitic? As far as we know, that being Jewish is living, deriving, or contributing to or being subjugated under a certain religion and or belief system, and that being Jewish is not a race, but white is a race, black is a race, Asian is a race. Am I wrong by stating so? I'm just asking questions because I am not anti-Semitic. I don't go throughout my day talking and denigrating Jewish Americans because, quite frankly, I don't care much. I care more so for my people and speak about the empowerment of my people, the uplifting of my people, the education of my people versus trying to denigrate and downgrade other people. I don't do that. But there needs to be truth told and comparisons made in order to understand the dynamics of the situation. That's what needs to happen. So again, that's money out of California. Good old Gavin Newsom. Secondly, New York. Meg secures millions to help implement her hate crime act, recently signed into law by President Biden. $30 million in a key spending bill to expand provision in her COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, which Biden signed into law on May 20th to help combat the ongoing hate and violence against Asian Americans. Money ensues a lot of these federal legislation, but Vox came out and said hate crime laws won't actually prevent anti-Asian hate crimes. No. But it will prosecute people to the full extent in the law. And again, the money behind the bill. So let's go a little bit deeper here. Now, I want to point out some things that a lot of people are not understanding, that there's this millions and billions of dollars floating to all these different demographics and the protections under the law, right? Signed historic executive order advancing LGBTQI plus equality during Pride Month. President Biden believes that no one should face discrimination because of who they are and whom they love. Well, let's just focus on one part of this. They shouldn't face discrimination because of who they are. Then if black folk, according to the FBI, which is a federal government entity, it stated that the most hate crimes are executed from white America to black America. Where is our hate crime bill? Where is our protections under the law? Where are they? Again, benign neglect. But we went out and voted. If you don't, Michelle Obama, if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. Well, I'm talking now, and I still have my vote. Well, you need to be heard because there's atrocities that's occurring to the LGBTQI community. There are immigrants at the border who needs asylum. How does that help black Americans? Oh, ask Chicago. Ask Chicago. Oh, know what? Better yet, go up to New York and knock on Mayor Adams' door and say, didn't you need funding to house those illegal immigrants that you allow your city to bring in because you're a sanctuary city? Stating facts. Biden signs bill to protect same-sex marriage. I'm not hating, but I'm looking. I'm comparing. And what I'm seeing consistently is that this president and the Democrats have done nothing for black Americans. That did not include everyone else. That did not include everyone else. And I want you guys to really stay tuned for this when I show this video, because I wanted to be ever so prevalent in your mind. The Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Latino communities across the country. And again, family, this is an educational moment. We have to focus on the words, okay? For the words. And there's one key word that always groups in everyone else. Now, as I pointed this out, I don't want to keep going back and forth here, but I want you guys to really, really focus on the wording here. This advance in equity is for the Latino community across the country and no one else. Latino community, and I'm not hating. This legislation that advances equity and opportunity for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, the so-called AAPI community, the Asians and Pacific Islanders. That has always been it. That's always what it has been. But when it comes to black Americans, not only do they group in every other group like the Hispanics, like the Asians, and any other demographic that American singles out, it has grouped them in our so-called advancement for equity and opportunity by stating one word: for black Americans and communities across the countries. Now, let me show you the difference very quickly. Black Americans and communities across the country, for Latino communities across the country. Very, very easy comparison there. And it also states here that the promise of America for black Americans and all communities across the country. That's everybody. That's the hillbillies. That's the rich folk. Everybody. Everybody's getting what black Americans get. You're not getting anything on your own. We're just going to solely focus on those Asian communities and those Hispanic communities. But when it comes to black, even though we put your name in the title, that was kind of to attract you for the vote. But when we look at the legislation, we're going to group in all the communities across the country, right? All the communities across the country. It's so disrespectful because they know that no one's going to go in and read this. But I will. Yeah. Reading is fundamental. Reading is fundamental, family. And let's get on some of the last segments here dealing with Joe Biden, because we already know we shouldn't be voting for him. We should not be voting for him. And we should not be voting for the other people unless reparations, land grants, as well as justice, anti-hate legislation is on the table. President Biden's budget delivers for tribal nations and tribal communities. Where's the money, Joe? Where's the money? Well, Native Americans. Oh, actions to support Indian country and Native communities ahead of the administration's second tribal. Okay. Biden and his administration makes $135 million commitment to support relocation of tribal communities affected by climate change. So family, impoverished Black Americans that has been affected by Katrina, do you think they got massive support from the Bush administration? Do you think they got massive support from any federal administration? No, they have not. I'm just pointing out a difference in this, because through investments from President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law and Inflation Reduction Act, the department is committing $115 million for 11 severely impacted tribes to advance its relocation efforts and adaptation planning, adaptation training. Adaptation is like adapting to your environment. So what they're going to do is they're possibly going to build infrastructure, right? Because they're talking about adaptation planning, build infrastructure so if any climate change occurs in a certain area that they will be ready for. It's kind of like if they will go in and not only put levees and dams in place in Louisiana, but they will put these on stilts or raise up their housing. So if it floods, given off historical data and statistics of the water levels that usually rises, but raising those buildings, raising those duplexes, apartment buildings, houses to a level where water has not risen, adaptation planning. It states here additional support for relocation will be provided by the Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA. Federal money, family, again, supporting Native Americans. I'm not against it. I'm just pointing it out. Because the one thing that we have to continue is putting our eyes on the prize, following the money consistently. Because when I look at the Senate passed the largest investment in Native programs in history, more than $31 billion heading to Native American communities. And family, time after time, I tell you, follow the money. So again, I'm going to point out some things very, very quickly as I'm about to end here. $6+ billion for Native American health system. There's plenty of Black Americans who are working, unfortunately, because discrimination and bias in America, low-income jobs, whether they have a degree or not, whether they have a trade or not, they're still struggling, and they need health care. But we're going to put $6 billion in Native American healthcare systems. That's fine. We're going to put $1.2 billion for HUD, meaning housing, okay? Housing assistance programs. We're going to put another $1 billion in for educational programs. We're going to put another $1 billion in for families, for programs like TAF and pandemic emergency assistance. We're going to put $900 million into tribal government services, okay? So that money can go to those local communities and those aldermen and councilmen that we really don't hear about that's in these Black enclaves. Do you think they're getting $900 million? Absolutely not. $600 million for Native communities' critical economic infrastructure investments, $20 million to mitigate the impact of COVID-19, $19 million for Native community efforts to combat domestic violence. And some of you are going to say, well, Ross, the Native American tribe, over 500 federal recognized, they're a protected class and they're sovereign citizens of their own state. And my only question to you would be, and? So I'll move on to good old brother, scholar, very respectful young brother. I'm saying that with some candidacy at part. Cornel West. I have mad respect for Cornel West. He's a scholar, he's an intellectual. But one of the things I must point out, he's a multiculturalist. He calls everybody dear brother. And everybody is not your dear brother, Cornel West. He's very intelligent. So for quite some time, he's been very critical of the Democratic and Republican Party, but he's always been supportive of the Democratic Party. He is now running as an independent, AKA People's Party. So there's some things to be saying about Cornel West as a potential presidential candidate running as an independent, right? We understand that he has sparked hope and enthusiasm among some people. However, while acknowledging Dr. West's intellectual prowess and activism, it is crucially to critically examine the limitation of his candidacy and policies, particularly regarding the historical ongoing struggles that faced by Black Americans. Now let's break down some historical context, because we need to understand the challenges faced by Black Americans today. We must acknowledge the enduring impact of historical injustices, the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, and all other sorts of atrocities, and the violence that I love to always state of the Red Summer of 1919 that has left lasting scars on the Black community. While Dr. West's passion for social justice is commendable, it's important to question whether his proposed policies can effectively repair the deep-seated damage inflicted over a century because of the system of white supremacy. Now, running as an independent or under the banner of the People's Party presents significant hurdles for Dr. West, for Dr. Cornel West. The U.S. political system heavily favors the two major parties. We must understand that, making it incredibly challenging and almost damn near impossible for a third party or independent candidates to gain widespread traction and enact substantial policy changes. Because without substantial political backing and a viable coalition and the money to do it, the ability to implement transformative policy become exceedingly difficult. Let me tell you something, family. There's a lot of things that we must understand that Dr. Cornel West running for president can do all sorts of things. It can divide the Democratic vote, thus wiping the legs from under the table in the Democratic Party, or in contradiction and contrast of galvanizing Black people behind a Black man and then turning over the reins to the white power structure of the Democratic Party. Did we learn anything from Jesse Jackson? Did we learn anything from Jesse Jackson? How he galvanized the Black vote, then handed it over to the Democratic Party. I'm running for president. You know what? I'm not running for president anymore, but you know who we should vote for? Time and time again, we continue to get hoodwinked, bamboozled, tricked, fooled, and manipulated. Time and time again. When are we going to stand for less? When are we going to stand for less? That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we stand for less when it comes to these things, family, because it's time out for being tricked. It's time out for being tricked. Because Dr. West, he may articulate compelling visions and ideas. The practical implementation of his proposed policies become a crucial consideration. Repairing the historical damage inflicted upon Black Americans requires comprehensive plans that address economic disparities, criminal justice reform, educational equity and access to health care, and first and foremost, reparations in the form of direct cash payments. Now, merely espousing revolutionary ideas without a clear roadmap for implementation risks leaving Black Americans without tangible solutions. Please, give me a damn break, Cornel West. I love you, brother. You're an intellectual. You're one of the most intelligent Black men I've ever heard. I wish I could even interview you. But let me tell you, fam, you know and I know there's only certain things that may arise from this. And one of those things, yeah, you're going to decrease the power base for the Democratic Party. You're going to put some issues in the spotlight and on the forefront that will bring it to national and international attention, and we may get support from other groups. You may awaken the minds and bodies and spirits of black folk who are still asleep, that Ron DeSantis don't want to be woke. I said, stay awake and stay woke. Because that's what I'm talking about, family. That's what we need. Because when we're talking about the success of any presidential candidate, particularly when addressing the needs of black communities, it depends on their ability to build broad and diverse coalitions in order to use the power base that they are galvanizing to move the pendulum. Now, Dr. West has a loyal following among activists and intellectuals. His appeal may not resonate widely enough to mobilize the necessary support. Building alliances across racial and ethnic and social economic, because as I stated before, Dr. Cornel West is a multiculturalist. I don't believe he's black first, he's people first. And some like, yeah, he's gonna be the president of the United States of America. He gotta be people first. But who is the most aggrieved group in America? Who is the group that has not been repaired by America? Who's the group that everybody else went first except black Americans? We are. Just like the guy said up in Chicago. You know, I don't mind you helping the illegals, Hispanics, and things of that nature, which I'm against, but that's okay. He said, but we first. We've been living here. So if you go and research a lot of things that have been happening out of Chicago, you'll find that video. There's some things to address here. There's some things to address. Because we understand in building those so-called racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic lines, we have to understand that the meaningful change that may or may not come from it, which historically it has not helped being a multicultural person. So a lot of these things remains uncertain. Dr. Cornel West, his candidacy can garner the necessary backing to build such coalitions in politics in order to move legislation that will help and support black Americans in the form of reparations. So, addressing these multifaceted challenges that face black Americans requires an understanding of the practicalities of governance and the limitations of immediate sweeping change. While bold proposal may capture attention, I'm going to give, like Marion Williamson, those bold proposals. I'm going to give you reparations. But $1 trillion, $1 trillion, you owe us 17. You owe us 70 trillion. But sustainable progress often comes through incremental change, so to speak. Coalition building and understanding of the political landscape, which may prove challenging for a candidate running outside the traditional party system, AKA our dear brother, Cornel West. Now, as I stated before, by ending this broadcast, I must end this broadcast on a good note. And that is leaving you with the video that Joe Biden done during his presidential run in the last term. When asked the question, do you support reparation for the American descendants of slaves? This is what your president and you guys went out and vote for, because you couldn't even fathom you not voting and showing the power base of the black grassroots, or voting for grassroots candidates on the state and local level. See, I'm not stating not to vote, but when we just vote on a federal level for the presidency and that's it, we're not helping to homegrown grassroots black candidates that are reparationists first, like a Marcel Dixon. There's not enough of them, but they need financial backing, they need social backing, they need environmental backing, they need black people to galvanize and support them in any way possible, because it's a sacrifice for them. But I digress. Let's focus on Joe Biden and get the hell out of here. Lord, have mercy.
Do you support compensation for those families? Should the U.S. also compensate descendants of enslaved people? Do you support reparations for African Americans?
I support H.R. 40, which is the bill that has been proposed in Congress to establish a commission to look at reparations. But we shouldn't wait for that commission to do its work to do things that are reparative.
Now,
remember,
what I want to point out
we're not talking about
here
a gift to anybody. We're talking about mending what was broken. We're talking about
what I want to point out here is that the first gentleman, which you already know, Buttigieg, whatever his name is, was asked the very same question that Joe Biden will be asked, and he's talking about he support the study. Family, slavery in America is one of the most reported, historically recorded, written tragedies in anybody's history. Just as well as the pyramids and the black melanated Egyptians. Probably more recorded than that. You know how many books that is directly or indirectly describing and telling about slavery here in America of black melanated people? Millions. I'm pretty sure there's millions, okay? So again, let's try this. Let's try this.
Compound, just like a dollar saved in its value compounds over time. So does the value of a dollar stolen. And that is why the United States must act immediately with investments in minority-owned businesses, with investments in
minority-owned businesses. That means everybody.
And on the longer term, look at reparations so that we can mend what has been
minorities is everybody.
Vice President Biden, do you support reparations?
Look, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance.
Family, number one, I have to do this. I have to start over. I'm gonna end it after this, I assure you. But you have to hear, do you support reparations? And he's gonna go right into immigration. Listen up.
Do you support compensation?
In HBCUs and on the longer term, look at reparations so that we can mend what has been broken.
Vice President Biden, do you support reparations?
Look, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent.
Immigration.
The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of every 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America, and we should invest in them. Everybody will benefit from it, every single American, and you should get used to it. This is a nation of immigrants. That's who we are. That's why we're who we are. That's what makes us different, and we should.
This is not a nation of immigrants. This is a nation of American citizens. This is a nation of foundational black Americans, U.S. freedmen that built this country before this country was even a country. If you date back, so if slavery started back in the 1500s, by the way of those 100 slaves that were brought here by the Spanish conquistadors, or if you just, we can use 1619, which is not the correct year, but nonetheless 1619. America was established, what, 1775? So slaves were already here 100 plus years before the country. So we are not immigrants. We are not immigrants. Now, some people might say, well, Native Americans were here and it was their country. But as far as the United States of America is concerned, when they built this Great Britain colonial compound, we're not immigrants. And see, that's the disrespect that Joe Biden had for black Americans. They asked him about reparations. This man is talking about goddamn immigrants. And you see what you got, and you see what you get.